You're listening to WRUULP, Savannah, Georgia, 107.5 FM, WRUU.org. We are Savannah Soundings, community radio with global soul.
Check, check, 1, 2. Look like a little country, some rock and roll and blues. 'Cause we sure love playing for good people like you. Let me know if you can hear me. Check, check, 1, 2.
Welcome to Music Local and Sustainable, the radio show that features discussions with and the music of local musicians. I am your host, Dave Lake. Tonight we have Eric Dunn in the studio. You have heard Eric Dunn on the premiere show that we did with Velvet Caravan many months ago, and he has been referred to quite often when we've been talking about different bands in the city. Finally, we have him here in the studio. Welcome, Eric Dunn.
Thanks, Dave. Savannah Ambassador Dave Lake, I might add.
You have been involved in a lot of different bands here in the city. So let's start by talking about your musical journey. Where did you start?
I first picked up a guitar, I guess I was probably around 10. In Wilmington Island, that's where I grew up. It was a classical guitar. My grandparents always played music, so we had a musical family. But I picked up a guitar and just fell in love with it around 10 and played that throughout until about high school. A little bit after high school, I started a band with my best friend Mike Fahey, which is a saxophone player. He also works at Grave Face Record Store. Him and I started a band in my garage like every normal high school kid does. Hockey stick, microphone, all that stuff. Started that band called Puppet. Still have the tape somewhere. Did that, I guess that was around high school. After high school, went off to college and came back during the summers to work at North Beach Grill and at the beach umbrella stand, which I still work, North Beach Rentals. And started another band called Country Fried Steak. That was kind of like the jam band thing. Was going on a lot with like Perpetual Groove and all that around here. And I really looked up to those guys and started our own little band out on Tybee. The drummer was excellent. We didn't have a good bass player, and you got to have the meat and potatoes. The guitar player can be kind of, but you got to have a good bass player. So I was like, give me that thing. So I grabbed the bass. I'm probably like 19 years old at this time. I picked up the bass and started playing it, and that next day, I sold 4 guitars and 3 or 4 amps to get my first bass and bass amp. And since that day, I've never, ever played guitar live ever again. I've always been a bass player.
You said it was very interesting because you said you need the meat and potatoes.
Yeah.
And if you got a guitar player, that's okay. Now, I think the normal individual would think the exact opposite. They would think, oh, man, you got to have a guitarist up there ripping.
I don't think so. Maybe that's probably the bass player in me talking, but you got to have that foundation. The guitar player can play chords all day, that's fine, but you got to have the foundation first. It's like crawling before you walk. You got to have that before you can have anything else, if you ask me. Most musicians will tell you the same thing, too. Once we got that, obviously, I like the band a lot better. I like playing bass. I just like the groove, and I don't really care about showing off on the guitar and things like that. I just like to be part of the band, making one sound.
The bass can be a rhythmic anchor for the band, but it's the harmonic anchor for the band too. So it can serve both functions. If you have a drummer, then you can have be the rhythmic foundation.
Yeah, we're playing notes, but we're also holding rhythm. So it's a lot more complicated than most people think, because most people think it's 4 strings. It's easier to play than a guitar, but there's actually a lot more thought that goes into playing bass. Even just by how you hit the string, how the attack is, and how you want to hit it on the meat part, or you want to hit it on the real punchy part on the end of your finger. Well, this is with electric. It's different with the acoustic, but there's so much more that you can do with the bass, if you ask me.
We will be talking about that as we go through.
I'm a bass nerd, so.
One of the purposes of this show is not only to introduce the musicians in the town to the public, but also to talk about technical things.
Right.
Because it's often when you see the technical things, you realize, in this case, that it's just not a guy standing in the back just looking really cool and plunk an occasional note.
Yeah, you got to look cool. That's rule number one.
Preferably a good pair of Ray-Bans.
Yeah.
I don't know if Ray-Bans are still in things. But,
yeah.
But it's a whole lot more than that. And so we're going to be talking about the nitty-gritty of bass playing. Sorry to interrupt you. Let's go on with the story.
Okay. I sold all my guitars, my amps, bought my first bass. Is a 5-string Fender. I'm kind of a short guy, so my first bass amp was this huge, gigantic bass, way too big than I needed. I mean, barely fit in my SUV. Got that. At this point, I was living in Atlanta, so I started going to jam nights up there and getting kicked out every Monday for about a year. And kind of like learned some chops up there, and so now we're in 2001-ish. So I'm in Atlanta. I'm at culinary school. I'm in kind of like the art scene, music scene, all that stuff. And then a couple years later, I'm in Athens. And that's when I really start playing bass a lot. Because as any musician knows, a bass player is always needed everywhere. So I had a bass amp. I was a bass player at this point. So I'm playing with like a punk rock band. I'm playing with a band that kind of sounds like Muse, kind of like math rock. Some folk guys. I'm playing all over the place in Athens. And finally, after Athens chewed me up and spit me out, I'm back on Tybee. So, and that's when the train wreck started.
So let's talk a little bit about Athens. Was that just a very intense scene? Is that what you mean?
Super intense scene. Athens, at that time, I'm not sure how it is now, but it was like the mecca for awesome bands. All this different kind of music, very creative stuff going on, and a lot of it kind of scared me a little bit. There was one band the first band that I answered a Craigslist ad, or no, it was actually in the flagpole. I think this is a little before Craigslist, maybe. This guy was completely insane, jumping around all over the place. The music was super weird, but somehow, like, I liked it. You know, it's like, this is cool. But I wasn't quite ready to jump around and freak out on stage yet. I'm only like 22 at this point. So I wasn't quite ready for all that yet, so I ended up playing with this other band, like the math kind of rock band. They were called Something Sunday. I used to mess with them, though. I'd be like, you guys want to practice on Sunday, or are you doing Something Sunday? You know, that's one thing I remember about that band. But I did hone my bass skills, I think, with doing all that stuff. And then getting back to Savannah, starting a train wrecks with Jason. Jason would come up to Athens, too, and play. We'd do some duo shows, some house parties and things like that. But Athens was like the melting pot. But like I said, it was pretty hard up there. I was planning on going to school and all that, and just got mixed up in the music, and that was the poorest time of my life. It was in Athens, so it was pretty hard, but pretty awesome at the same time. Going through all that with all my buddies, though, I had all my friends around me, so it wasn't that bad.
When you came back down here to Savannah and the Tybee area, along with the train wrecks, you were recruited for some other bands.
Well, as soon as I got back here, Jason and I started gigging 7 nights a week, just the two of us. We were called the Savannah River Cats for about a week, and we actually got one write-up, which I think Jason's wife, Gentry, saved somewhere. The Savannah River Cats, whatever, that was the duo. And then we got hooked up with Hazel Virtue, which is Eric Britt's band, and that's how we met Marcus, and he was on drums. And Marcus, Hazel Virtue was kind of slowing down, and Marcus needed some work, so he became our drummer, and that's how the Trainwreck started. And we did the Trainwrecks thing for over 10 years. As far as being in a band with folks, a lot of people think I'm in like a lot of bands, but I'm not. I fill in a lot. I just like playing with other people. I think it's good for you. Just get thrown into something different. It's always good for you as a musician, I think. I really haven't been in too many full-time bands because Trainwrecks was a full-time thing for 10 years for me. It wasn't until Velvet Caravan came around that I started doing that also. Now I'm in the Isaac Smith band, which is awesome. Kind of takes me on a different playing field than doing the Velvet Caravan thing. It lets me rock out a little more, play electric. I also play with Anders Thompson from time to time. I'm pretty sure I'm his 8th call bass player. I always mess with him saying that, but he's like, man, I called you first. I'm like, yeah, right, whatever. It's cool, though. I like doing the gigs, I like doing different stuff because nowadays we don't get to play around here quite so much, so it's nice to get out and see everybody and play.
The Velvet Caravan is gypsy jazz.
Mm-hmm.
The Isaac Smith Band is really singer-songwriter driven.
Americana. It's kind of, he's got some, when we play full band, it kind of rocks out.
Okay.
It's kind of the Jason Isbell kind of thing. The guy sings like an angel. He's got some pipes, and the musicians he plays with are like top notch. Robert is probably the best drummer I've ever played with, so it's a pleasure playing with those guys. That's another reason. Those guys are just pros, and they get on stage and they're pros, and it's nice.
And then with Anders Thompson, that's really more country rock. It's maybe a little rockabilly thrown in.
Oh yeah, it's whiskey throwdown music. It's super fast. And it's pretty challenging. I used to bring the upright to that gig, and I was like, I can't do that anymore. It's too fast. My hands would be like killing me the next day.
So let's talk a little bit about the Velvet Caravan. How did you get involved with the Velvet Caravan?
Ricardo and I worked together at Savannah Music Festival. I've always been a fan of Ricardo's playing. Sasha moved to town. Ricardo started playing at B. Matthews, which we all frequent B. Matthews because our music festival office is a block away. And the food's amazing, and everybody that works up there is awesome, so we always go there. So I would go and see Ricardo and Sasha playing, and it blew my mind. I've kind of always wanted to play that kind of music ever since Robbie Lekatosh came to the festival, and I got to see that. There's a few shows that I've seen at music festival that were just like out of this world crazy, and that's one of them. And when I say crazy, I mean blew my mind. Awesome. Ricardo and I are standing next to each other at that show, just like with our mouths wide open. We're like, oh my gosh, this is so awesome. And Ricardo started playing that stuff with Sasha as soon as he moved to town, and I was, please can I bring my bass and just try, because I was so scared, like, 'cause I've never ever played jazz or anything like that, and these guys are all reading charts and stuff, and I didn't think I could do it. I knew I couldn't do it, but I knew I had to try. But I was like, can we please have a rehearsal? And I recorded it on my iPad so I could see what we were doing. I still have that recording on my iPad, which is pretty hilarious to watch, because I'm just sweating bullets. I didn't know Sasha yet, and I didn't know how they were going to take my playing and all this, and they were just super nice, and they're like, it's going to take time, but they worked with me and taught me how to read the charts, and I started taking some classical lessons. The next week, I got to do something to be able to play this stuff with these guys. Started taking my lessons with Ray Williams, which he is the best bass teacher in the world. That guy is so good. He has so much patience. His students are amazing. He has like 9-year-olds that'll like smoke me in a second, which is great. It just goes to show you how great of a teacher he is. Started showing up because I think they were playing 2 nights a week at that point, Friday and Saturday or Thursday and Friday. Started showing up, playing every week, just learning as much as I could, just getting thrown in it. And that's kind of how we started as a 3-piece at that point. We weren't really Velvet Caravan yet. We were just jamming at a restaurant. They were called Duo Gitano. I did that for almost a year. It wasn't really Velvet Caravan until all the guys showed up and we got a gig and we had to make a name. Jesse and Jared kind of came in around the same time, and kind of all just happened naturally. It's pretty awesome how it happened, actually. And we just started playing in that restaurant. It started getting really packed in there, and we're walking around at tables doing the Italian thing where you go up singing Happy Birthday right next to them and just playing violin right in their face, carrying the bass all around that place. So that's pretty much how all that started, and that was about 5 years ago.
There have been some recent changes in the band.
Yes. Sasha, unfortunately, is pretty sad. He's no longer with us. He had to make a grown-up decision. He got a job up in Bowling Green, Kentucky, and his wife lives there, and he wanted to be closer to his family. And so he moved up there with his family, and he's a doctor. He can't be gone all the time, and it was pretty stressful on his life. I think he liked it better when we were just kind of playing around town, which obviously he wasn't able to do the traveling as much as we were. So he moved to Bowling Green with his family. He's got a really good job there. He's doing great. He's playing in Nashville with the Gypsy Hombres, which, if you haven't seen them in Nashville, they're killer musicians. There's a lot of Eastern European players up there, so he's having a ball up there. And our new guitarist, we actually have a couple that we're using right now, but I think Jimmy Grant is from San Francisco, California, so I think hopefully they're going to move here to Savannah. I think they love it here. We're just trying to work out the details on that.
Now, he was in town a while back, and you were playing some sets around town.
Right.
In duo, trio forms.
Oh, yeah, we worked him so hard that week. I kind of felt bad for him because they didn't get to see Savannah hardly at all because we kept him working so much. We played 5 times in a week, I think. His first day, we did 3 different shows because it's expensive to get them over here and stuff. So we worked for sure. He's actually coming back for 3 weeks. Next week, he'll be here for 3 weeks. He writes all of his own stuff, and it's all great. It's killer stuff. And he's an awesome dude. He's really fun. He fits in with us very well.
He's also an awesome guitar player.
Yeah, he's also great. I mean, besides, I like to give in. Yeah, he's a killer guitar player, but the guy is hilarious. So it's been awesome working with him. But we've also been working with Tim Clement from New York, who is a monster on guitar. I mean, this guy, he's straight up New Yorker. He's like, hey, how you doing, you know? But he's like, it was so funny. When we were in Arizona, we played Over the Rainbow at this theater at the Musical Instrument Museum, which was awesome, by the way. And we played Over the Rainbow. He's like, those chords, those are the most beautiful freaking chords I've ever played. It was just funny to hear him say that. He's awesome, too. He's straight up cool, dude. It's been real nice just knowing that we can play with all these different people, and we're meeting a lot of different people through this situation also. It's nice being able to know that we can get by like that, because we were pretty nervous and sad when Sasha moved. We're kind of like, what are we going to do? But it turned out great. Both those guys are killer. We're going to still do shows with Tim for now, and definitely going to do a lot of shows with Jimmy. It's been an exciting journey.
Tonight we have Eric Dunn. Let's look back at some of that journey, because last year you got professional national representation.
Right.
And what has that done for the band?
The gigs are like way high caliber gigs. We're playing mainly theaters and things like that, which is what I've always wanted to do. The whole band, we love it. But we're actually focusing more on each show. Each show should be its own thing. And we're getting into a lot more places that we wouldn't have been able to get into if it weren't for them. Every month we're going out of town this year. We already have on the books every month. We're going somewhere different. It's all in the United States. But we're trying to just get out there this year, play in as many areas as we can and do well in them.
Tonight we have Eric Dunn, probably most famous for his work with Velvet Caravan, but as you're finding out tonight, he has done so much more around town in both the upright bass and the electric bass. At the end of last year, you had some gigs up in upstate New York.
Right.
And also in New York City.
Mm-hmm.
You played the Iridium.
We did. That was insane cool. I was super nervous because it was nothing but talent buyers. It was during the APAP convention, so it was full of talent buyers. But once we got up there and started playing, it was fine. It was pretty cool. New York City kind of blew my mind. Actually went and sat in with a gypsy band my first night there, and ends up we know a lot of the same people. So the music world is a lot smaller than you think, too. Even up in New York City, everybody knows everybody. They even knew Jimmy from out west. Also, we played the Rochester Jazz Festival last year. And that was our first big festival that we've done. We showed up. They had like a trailer with our name on it. Picked us up from the airport. I mean, it was pretty cool. It was kind of like Savannah Music Festival. A lot of jazz, a lot of classical, mixing in some rock and roll here and there. It reminded me of the Savannah Music Festival a lot, how they did everything. They were super pro, took care of us really well. Crowd was amazing. We had 2 shows there. First show was completely full, like probably 700 people. The next show was probably about 400. I think the second show, there was just a lot of stuff going on elsewhere. At our hotel that we stayed at, all the musicians stayed there. So we had a jam session every night. That was my first taste of jamming with some really good jazz people.
And then you were in Arizona. You mentioned that you were at the Instrument Museum in Phoenix.
Right, that place. Whew, that place is awesome. I could have walked around that place for 2 days and been completely content. It's a huge museum. It was somebody's private collection. They donated every instrument in the entire world you could ever think of seeing was there. The theater was one of the best sounding theaters I've ever seen. They had a Meyer system in the walls. You couldn't even see the speakers. The most acoustically sound place. That was our first show that we played with Tim. So we actually sat there and rehearsed for 3.5 hours before the show. And that show was amazing. That kind of taught us that we like to rehearse before the show because we're good and warmed up, and it just makes the whole show so much better.
So that's something you've begun to do now.
So, we're learning along the way still. We definitely like to get good and warmed up, take a good long sound check, get some good food in us, and hit it as hard as we can every time. So here's the funny part about Arizona. So that was on the December 30th, this past December 30th. So New Year's, we're in, what was the name of the place? It's near Tucson. It's a
Green Valley.
Yeah, Green Valley. Dave knows my schedule better than I do.
Well, I know the travels of the Velvet Caravan. It sort of sounds like I really do that. But actually, I consider Tucson home.
Really?
Yeah, and my parents are buried in Tucson.
Wow.
They lived in Green Valley, actually, for a short time before they moved back to Tucson. So I'm familiar with that area. Yeah.
Well, it's beautiful there. I loved it there. We played in like a retirement community. That was on New Year's. That was awesome. Our showtime was 7 p.m. on New Year's Eve. We did the ball drop at 8 p.m. But these people had a blast. They already booked us for next year. They booked us like the next week for next year. It was great. We put on a killer show for them. I mean, everybody was dancing. I love it. I'm excited for next year there. I want to spend more time in Tucson also. With the mountains and the desert. I mean, it's pretty awesome. I wanted to go to Mexico really bad, but we didn't have time.
Maybe next time.
Yeah.
I have to admit, Nogales is not much, unless it's changed dramatically. I've not been to Nogales in decades, but I'm sure it hasn't really changed much. It's a border town.
Right.
So.
Yeah, that's where I wanted to go. Well, it's when you go there, there's like the line, right? You're either in
Right, there's Nogales,
Mexico.
Arizona, and then Nogales, Sonora. Yeah.
Right. That's where I wanted to go. Next time.
Yeah. I think it's wonderful because it's really home to me. Tonight we have Eric Dunn, probably most famous for his work with Velvet Caravan, but as you're finding out tonight, he has done so much more around town in both the upright bass and the electric bass. You said pretty much every month you're going to be touring.
Right. Every month. Mm-hmm. Playing Philadelphia World Cafe Live next weekend. So we'll be in that area. We're driving there. And then we're going to be in Florida the week after that. So we kind of doing like 4 days at a time here. Maybe a couple weeks later, 4 days here. It's going to start being more and more like that.
And try to do a few gigs while you're there.
Yeah, we try to do 2 or 3, probably 3 at the most. A lot of these gigs that we're playing, these shows, I can't say gigs really, they're shows, concerts.
Right.
But
theaters.
Yeah, you're not allowed to play within 150 or 200 miles that weekend, so we usually try to hit up a city that's further away than that, kind of make the trip worth it. We're doing a lot of that, and it's definitely really great being on Cost and Talent's roster because they know everybody. They've been doing it for so long. Their acts are like us. They're eclectic and kind of doing their own thing. It's a blessing. We were there, right place, right time at South by Southwest. He actually came up to us right after our show and said he wanted to work with us. And we're usually like, okay, we'll believe it when we see it. Next day, he shows up to our next show and signs us right after the show. It's exactly what we went to South by Southwest. That's where it's at with this business. I'm starting to learn. You have to be good, but You also have to have the right people working with you. But these shows and concerts we're doing it's what I've always wanted to do, so I couldn't be any happier. Especially with the orchestra stuff. Oh my gosh. That was mind-blowing. The first one is funny. The first one that we did, the trumpet player's like, did you see the look on the bass guy's face? When the orchestra started playing, I was just like in heaven.
That was the other thing you did here in Savannah last year.
Yeah, that was...
You performed with the Philharmonic.
That was the best concert I've ever been a part of. That one was like one for the books. My grandma would have been so proud. I wish she could have seen that. But she passed away before the Velvet Caravan stuff really started happening, so she never really got to see me doing this stuff, so she would have been like super proud.
Mm-hmm.
But she's watching me. I think that's why she pushed me, you know, take lessons, do this, do that, you know.
And at that concert here in Savannah, you premiered a work that Ricardo wrote.
Honestly, that was probably the best piece of the whole night, if you ask me. I mean, what do you think?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
He worked on that for months, and it came out just incredible. We have to bring Sinisha when we do it, because he's the only guy that can really play that stuff. He came to Jackson, Tennessee, and did it with us there also, which that concert was great, don't get me wrong, but the one in Savannah was just, I mean, it was off the charts. In our hometown, all of our friends there playing in the orchestra, all our friends in the audience, all of our friends at work at the Lucas, everybody. That was amazing. That's definitely the best concert I've ever done in my life.
It was pretty impressive, too, when the conductor asked how many people are here for the first time. A whole lot of hands went up.
Yeah. You mean seeing the orchestra for the first time?
Seeing the orchestra for the first time.
See, it's great. It's mixing people together. It's mixing audiences. It's great how everybody in Savannah works together on music. I love it. That's what we do. That's one thing I love about Savannah is that all the musicians are always willing to help do this. Let's do this together. Let's do this together. Let's bring this crowd together with this crowd. And what the Trinity's been doing, what the Lucas does, everywhere. The UU here, some of the best concerts I've ever seen are at this little church because it sounds amazing and it's intimate. Everybody seems on the same page here musically. It's pretty awesome.
And we had on this show a few weeks back, basically.
Yeah. He's incredible.
He told some good stories about you passing on to him a guitar that was passed to you.
That's right. When I was in school in Atlanta at culinary school, when I'd go to the jam night at Northside Tavern. Have you ever been there?
Mm-mm.
Man, it's this little hole-in-the-wall juke joint blues place. I mean, it's awesome. But if you get on that stage during jam night, you better kick ass because they'll throw you off, which I found out repeatedly. But I got to become friends with some of those guys. And when I moved back down to Savannah from Athens, I ran into Zaza. I don't know if you remember who Zaza is, but he was a classical guitar player, 7-foot tall guy, braids on his chin. You couldn't miss this guy. I mean, he's a huge, tall guy, but amazing classical guitar player. He's playing at North Beach Grill. I'm working there, and he played there every Sunday, and I was like, didn't you used to play Northside Tower? He's like, yeah, man, I remember you, you know. And before he moved to Hawaii for a short period of time. But before he moved away, he showed up to North Beach Grill and gave me this Cordoba classical guitar, super nice guitar. Just thought that was the most incredible thing in the world. Like, I was jumping up and down when he gave it to me because I couldn't really afford a nice guitar. I definitely couldn't afford that guitar. And he was just doing a good deed, musical good deed, which was the most insane, cool thing I've ever been a part of. So he told me that all I had to do was just pass it down to somebody else that really needed it. So I probably had the guitar for 8 years. Steve Bumgardner, he would come to open mic night all the time, and he was really getting into guitar, and the guy sings amazing. And he'd always show up with this beat-up guitar, and we'd have to mic it every time. And it really just didn't do it justice. You know, I was like, man. And finally, just like something clicked in my head. I was like, I have to give it to Steve. He needs this thing. And so I passed it along to him, told him the story. And he was jumping up and down when I gave it to him. So Zaza's actually passed away now. But Zaza, he was amazing. I still have his CD. It's called Jazzical. It mixes jazz and classical. Yeah, I gave it to Steve, passed it along to him. He recorded an album with it like a week or two later. I was like, see, I knew he needed it. And he still plays it to this day. And he even had another one that he got, and he still plays the Cordoba. That thing has some stories under it. It actually was on Outkast's double album. Zaza, when he lived in Atlanta, he played on that album. So that guitar has a little bit of history behind it.
Stephen played it here when he was here in the studio, too.
Yeah.
So he played it on the show I did with him.
Sounded so beautiful, didn't it?
It sounded gorgeous. Yeah. And you're right, he's a very talented young man. You're listening to WRUU-LP, Savannah, Georgia, 107.5 FM, WRUU.org. We are Savannah Soundings, community radio with global soul. If your business enjoys the programming on WRUU-LP, please support the station with a donation. Let your customers, neighbors, and friends know that you share our vision of building a thriving economy based on a diverse and vibrant community. Our listeners will know you support Savannah's only broad-based community radio station. Become a tower sponsor or underwriter. To check out the levels of corporate sponsorship and to donate, go to www.wruu.org/corporate. Again, to check out the levels of corporate sponsorship and to donate, go to www.wruu.org/corporate. Thank you for listening to and supporting WRUU-LP. You're listening to Music Local and Sustainable, and I'm your host, Dave Lake. Tonight we have Eric Dunn, probably most famous for his work with Velvet Caravan, but as you're finding out tonight, he has done so much more around town in both the upright bass and the electric bass. Well, let's talk about the bass.
All right.
Let's go back 5 years, and people would say, oh yeah, Eric Dunn, the electric bass player. And now people say, Eric Dunn plays an electric bass? That's probably the Velvet Caravan that made that real switch over from people's perception of you in terms of what bass you play.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, for the most part, for sure. I mean, I play it upright with a lot of other people. Craig Tanner at acoustic jam night. I'm not going to bring my electric in there. I'm going to bring the acoustic. But yeah, for the most part, people have mainly seen me with Velvet Caravan with the upright. And honestly, I enjoy the upright more than the electric. There's certain settings where you have to play the electric. Like with a loud band, there's no way you can play an acoustic upright on the stage like that. Like with the Trainwreck, I rarely could play the upright because the stage volume is just incredibly loud. The thing just feeds back. But yeah, this is my baby Laverne, which was also my grandmother's name. My other one is Peggy, which is my other grandmother.
What are the differences between playing the electric bass and the upright bass? Because you generally see people do one or the other, but occasionally you'll see people do both.
For me, I mean, it's different for some people, but for me, it's the style of music that you're playing, the sound that you want to get for that music. And I mean, the only time I play electric, which I also love playing electric, because you can really get loud and thumpy with it. Unlike the acoustic, you can't really get that loud with it. And there's a lot more that you can do with the acoustic. You can bow it. I mean, you can get super subtle with it. It's just it's a lot more versatile, if you ask me. And you can hit it like a drum. It's just a lot more fun to play. And I'm trying to get better at it, so I try to play it as much as I can. So in upright bass is one of those things, if you don't play it for a week, it's just like you're starting over. So you really need to play it every day just to even keep your arms in shape and your hands. I'm always constantly going like this with my hands just because they're always weird from playing all the time, but it's pretty hard on your hands and your body. and my back too from holding my left arm up. It makes me like this, so you got to kind of like stay with it and keep your body in shape, and you need to play it every day. So I play it as much as I can, unless I absolutely have to play the electric. With the Isaac Smith band, I prefer to play the electric because it's a thicker sound. It's thick to mesh with the rock band. He's got heavy drums. I could play the acoustic, but it's just not going to sound as good for that music. So it really depends on the music when it comes down to it.
Let's get the bass up and
yeah,
and you can demonstrate some of the things that you do with the bass.
All right. And you kind of get like the growl, which is my favorite part of the upright. Kind of like the. You can't do that on the electric. There's no way to get that sound. And you get more of a jazz kind of warm when you're just plucking. So, I mean, I could sit here and just noodle around on this thing all day, but me as a bass player, I'm going to want to sit here and practice scales, so, which is pretty annoying for my roommate, but this thing, there's just so much more to this instrument than there is to an that you can do when the electric. I really enjoy the challenge of this instrument. It's so super hard to play. I mean, especially once you get high up in the register here when you're in the thumb position, I mean, you have to be like dead on every time. So it's a lot more challenging for me to sit home and mess around with this thing than it is on the electric.
Was it hard to convert over from a fretted instrument?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, it's a completely different instrument at this point. Going from an electric bass to the upright bass, you have to learn this instrument how it's supposed to be learned, which is the Savannah way. The Savannah way, which probably nobody listening probably knows unless you're a bass player or a violinist or a stringed instrument like that with no frets, is the way that you hold your fingers on your left hand on the fingerboard. It's not completely different, it's just the way that you hold your hand, and it's how you know where your correct notes are. Yeah, it was pretty hard. Yeah, I didn't take lessons when I first bought the upright, and I'm playing it all wrong. I was like, why can't I hit these notes right? Finally, once I started taking lessons with Ray, he started teaching me all that, and now I can hit any notes that I want, like dead on, as long as I practice all the time. And I'm even working on the thumb position now and trying to do leads way up high. Working on that pretty much when I'm at home, that's the kind of stuff I do. Trying to get better way up here. Mm-hmm. Because if you see all the jazz guys, they're killing it up here. I'm anywhere near that. But I'm working on it. You're always learning on this instrument. Ben Tucker told me that. I actually called Ben when he was playing on Sundays right when I got my upright, and I asked him, please help me with this thing. I'm having some trouble. And he's like, man, I'm too old, man. And he's like, all right, come by, talk to me. He's probably the main reason why I play upright bass, because when I used to go see him when I was a kid, just like making it look so easy and it sounding so good. I remember telling my roommate Mike Fahey, I was like, I'm gonna do that one day, and it's pretty cool because I'm standing in here right now with my bass, so it's pretty awesome. Thanks, Ben.
Tonight we have Eric Dunn, probably most famous for his work with Velvet Caravan, but as you're finding out tonight, he has done so much more around town in both the upright bass and the electric bass. What are some of the different techniques that you would do?
With Velvet Caravan, I do a lot of walking.
What's walking?
Walking is basically when you hear jazz and you hear... you're going through the chord and you're making your way to the next chord. You're basically walking to the next chord and then back, or whatever chord structure of the song you're playing. That's good at some point. Sometimes I'm just doing the bluegrass. A lot of the time, that's all you need, because we're a 5-piece, so I'm trying not to, you don't want to overplay. But,
and you have percussion. So.
Yeah, and we have percussion, so sometimes that's just what the song needs. Or sometimes I'm just doing a pedal, which is same note. Sometimes at the beginning I'll bow, do the intro as a bow, do the outro. Sometimes we end these Latin songs with a big... My bowing's not the greatest, but sometimes it needs it at the end. It's really good for the intros and outros. I'm not really good enough on it yet to play the whole song, maybe a slower song or something. But when I do practice, I always practice with my bow, with my scales and things like that, because that thing doesn't lie. If you hit a wrong note, you're going to know it immediately. It's really good for practice, and one day I would like to be a classical bass player. That's kind of one of my goals, is to do a solo concerto. I mean, that's a long ways away, but I think if I tried really hard, I might be able to do it by the end of next year or something. That's my goal.
Well, have you seen Edgar Meyer?
Oh, yeah. Oh, my gosh. Yeah, that's. I would like to be at that level one day. So all you can do is keep practicing and just keep doing my best. And I don't really see it, but some people who haven't seen me in a long time say that I've gotten a lot better, and I don't see it because I'm with myself playing every day. So it's nice to hear that, though. It's super nice. And even at the Wormhole the other night, I played. It was just Isaac and I, acoustic guitar, and me and my bass. And my buddy Carl was like, "Whoa, man!" He's like, "Have you been playing bass every day for the past year? Because that was the smoothest." He was like, just told me, I almost like started to get a tear in my eye, because he was like, just told me how natural and smooth it sounded, and just it sounded effortless, just like I used to think about Ben Tucker. So, that was pretty cool to hear.
It's really interesting too in the Velvet Caravan, because you and Jesse will share back and forth really the beat.
Oh yeah.
Sometimes he'll be running the beat, then it shifts to you,
mm-hmm.
and he then goes off and does a lot of whatever he does.
Right. This thing's almost percussion too. That's another thing I didn't mention earlier, but like hitting it and stuff. I almost have a bad habit of that. I do have a bad habit of it. You'll notice that when you're recording and stuff, all those little things come out. I'm trying not to do that so much, but it is like nice to have that. It's nice to like help people groove, and when Jesse's going off doing his own thing, I can kind of be the percussion for him. And that's another reason why I like this instrument. You can do so much with it. Like, I'm sure you've seen it when we start doing the breakdown of everybody's on Jesse's drum solo and Margaret. It's fun. It's a big box that has strings on it. Beat on that thing.
tonight we have Eric Dunn, probably most famous for his work with Velvet Caravan, but as you're finding out tonight, he has done so much more around town in both the upright bass and the electric bass. It's sort of a inside-out cajon.
Yeah,
because
exactly.
his is the box, but the strings are inside the box.
Right, yeah. It is. I mean, why not use it? I learned a lot of that stuff, too, from Chris Wood, from the Wood Brothers. That guy, he is a super innovative bass player. I mean, he'll pull the strings off the side of the fretboard to get that sound, and he beats on his. I've been watching that guy play since I was 18. Medeski, Martin, and Wood, those days. I always thought he was amazing. I get to see him this year at Savannah Music Festival again. He's going to be our closing night party with the Wood Brothers. And those guys, last time they played, I was show managing that concert, and I just remember those guys being in the green room rehearsing for 3 hours. When they went up there, they were so tight, and I was like, oh man, these guys are pros. You know, this is what you do. This is your job. You have to treat it. It's music, but it's your job. You know, you want to do the best you can. Those guys did it. And when they went out there, their harmonies were perfect. I mean, I remember I went in there, you know, like, oh, guys, your dinner's ready. They're rehearsing. Like, okay, cool, thanks. And then hours later, hey, guys, we got, 30 minutes. Doors are about to open. They're still playing. I was like, yeah, I was pretty impressed with that.
So let's switch over to the electric guitar.
Okay, cool.
What are some of the features of the electric guitar that you can modify to change the sound?
Yeah, well, this one I'm playing right now is a Hofner Beetle bass, which is one of my pride and joys. I actually picked this up probably 10 years ago. I love this bass. I go through disputes with her every now and then. But,
Now, is this Peggy?
This is not Peggy. Peggy is my other upright, my travel.
Upright bass, the travel upright bass.
This bass actually doesn't have a name, which is kind of weird because I don't know, I've just never had the right name for her, I guess. Vanessa is my fretless Warwick. I haven't named this one. I don't know, just hadn't done it. I don't know why. This bass, it uses flat wound strings, so it gives it more of that old Motown.
So flat wound, did you say?
Yep, flat wound. The strings are very smooth. They're wound flat, so most strings you feel they're a little rough. Those are called round wounds, but these gives you more of like the Motown, very like muffled kind of sounding. Very good for blues, good for soul. I love this bass for just about anything, but this is not a bass you would want to do like funk and stuff with. There's like no brightness, I like the deadness of the sound of this bass. But it's also, when you get it run through an amp pretty hot, like a nice Ampeg, it sounds like a low end of like a keyboard. It's very clean and precise. So that's why I like this bass. And this used to be, I never used to play this a whole lot, but now I'm starting to play it like a lot. Yeah, this is
because it's just the sound you like?
Oh, yeah. The sound, yeah. The fretless was my main bass throughout the Trainwrecks career, which they're still playing at, throughout my career with the Trainwrecks. I played the fretless Warwick. I don't know why I played that thing. I just love that bass. I got really good on it and just kept playing it until the neck got so warped that I couldn't play it anymore, basically. And I've tried to have it fixed like 5 times. And I think it's beyond its days now, or at least the neck is. I'm trying to find a new neck for it, if anybody knows where one is. But this thing, this is a piece of art. So I love this bass, and I actually had it for sale on eBay. But it's still for sale on eBay, but I really don't want to sell it. But I really want to buy a sailboat, give or take. Instruments come and go. Zaza taught me that. He's like, man, don't ever get hung up on an instrument because there's always another one out there. But I do love this bass, and I don't want to sell it, but I do need to get a sailboat. So, it's give and take. But this is her.
Tonight we have Eric Dunn, probably most famous for his work with Velvet Caravan, but as you're finding out tonight, he has done so much more around town in both the upright bass and the electric bass. So what are some of the things that you can do on the bass to change the tone under different circumstances?
One thing that I do a lot is palm mute with my right hand and pluck with my thumb. Mike Walker is the king of that. If you've never seen Mike Walker play bass, do yourself a favor and go see him. He doesn't really play around here a lot anymore, but it's really good for blues.
So your palm is on the strings.
My palm is actually on the strings in front of saddle here, and it's actually muting the string, so you just thump it really hard, and it gives you this real like dirty bluesy sound, that's one of the first things that I learned actually from Mike Walker. Another thing that you can do is this bass is kind of hard to give it a good example, but you can actually use the tips of your fingers very far back on the strings here close to the saddle. And you can get more of a pop, especially like with a Fender or something like that. That thing's going to sound funky. This thing's versatile too, just like that. But, I'd like to have the whole spectrum. Be able to, and as a bass player, you're going to get a lot more work if you know how to play all this stuff. I just kind of fell into the upright. I actually had one before this, but it was a piece of junk, It just wasn't set up. It was really hard to play. I'm kind of a fan of having the really hard to play one first, so by the time I got this, it was like playing a Stratocaster, the upright, It was like, I was like, oh my gosh, this thing is great. Back to the electric, though. Sorry, I keep jumping around.
That's fine.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff you can do with this also. This bass particular, though, maybe not so much because it has flat wounds on it, and it's kind of meant to do what it does, which is sound amazingly dead. So,
with the different strings, it has a brighter sound?
You never want to put round wounds on this bass. That's like, you don't want to do that. People, bass enthusiasts will get really mad at you and throw things at you, you don't want that kind of sound with this bass anyways, but yeah, if you have round wound strings, they're really bright. It's like what you hear when people are slapping and popping and things like that, which I don't do that, so I wish I could. Big E showed me some stuff, which is Eric Moore. If you don't know who Big E is, he's an amazing bass player here in Savannah. He's kind of the king of the funk bass. So he showed me some slap and pop stuff, but I don't even have a bass that is really good for that. I'm working on it. I'll get there. I think that might be one of my things I do later. But for right now, I'm happy with having this stuff.
And like you say, you really spend most of your time with the upright.
Yeah, exactly. Yep, I do. Yeah, like I said, if you don't play it every day, you're going to lose it. Or it's just going to be that much harder on your hands. Sometimes you'll see me walking around with huge blisters on my hands. It's because I didn't play it for a few days and I had like a long gig. You really have to keep in shape.
As you said, if you don't practice the upright bass, you lose it very quickly. And it's sort of like starting over from square one. That's not true of the electric bass?
A little bit, but not nearly as much. Because I play upright so much now and I go to the electric, sometimes my hands will get a little tired because I don't play like this anymore. But it's nowhere near that thing. I'm like crying, when it's like bad on that thing. I'm in serious pain. With the electric, my fingers might, get a little tired or something, but it's definitely, electric is good to keep up on too if you're playing it a good bit, because you want your speed there and all that dexterity. So, yeah, it's just not anywhere near as hard as the upright.
So if a young person wants to do bass, how would you recommend they approach?
I would recommend getting an upright. I think if you want to be a bass player, you should most likely start with the upright. If you want to do rock and roll and stuff, go to the electric bass. But if you want to be a bass player, I would start with the upright. Learn the right way. Do your lessons. That all this transfers to the electric bass. Do it the right way. Learn to read music. Learn your arpeggios. Do your scales. And do it the right way, which actually most bass players that I see, like young kids, they're all on upright. Or the ones that I know, at least. It's an expensive instrument to buy, but you can rent one and see if you like it, and then you can go buy one later. Yeah, I'd definitely start with the upright. That's where I think if you want to play bass, that's where you're going to learn the bass.
So tonight we've had Eric Dunn in the studio. It's been really great to have you. I know we know each other very well.
That's right.
And I've been looking forward to having you in the studio to talk about the bass, because the bass, as we said before, is one of the, I think, most misunderstood instrumentalists up there, particularly in rock bands.
Oh yeah. It's the easy guitar.
Yeah. You think they're just standing back there being cool.
Yeah.
So thank you so very much for coming in today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Dave. It's good to see you outside of the beach.
Right. We'll see you. We'll see you back at the beach.
All right, man.
This has been another edition of Music Local and Sustainable, and I've been your host, Dave Lake. Save this time for another show next week.
Well, I know we ain't headed for the Hall of Fame. Gonna give it what we got, man, that ain't no shame. Let me know if you can hear me. Check, 1, 2. Let me know if you can hear me. Check, 1, 2.